So far in this course, you've learned how to write queries to retrieve data from a single table, how to use joins to return data from multiple tables, how to use functions like substring, left, right, etc. to manipulate data, how to sort the data using the order by clause, how to filter the data using the where clause, how to use the aggregate functions to group the data. But each of those queries that you have written has been a single self-contained statement. SQL Server also provides the ability to nest one query within another, in other words, to form subqueries. In a subquery, the result of the inner query are returned to the outer query. This can provide a great deal of flexibility for your query logic. In this module, you'll learn what the uses are for writing these subqueries, how to write the self-contained subqueries, how to write correlated subqueries that return scalar or multi-valued results, and how to use the exists predicate to efficiently check for the existence of rows in a subquery. A subquery is nothing but a select statement nested within another query. Being able to nest one query within another will enhance your ability to create effective queries in T-SQL. In this lesson, you'll learn how to write self-contained queries which are evaluated once and provide their results to the outer query, learn how to write scalar subqueries which return a single value, and multi-valued subqueries which, as their name implies, can return a list of values to the outer query. A subquery, like we discussed before, is a select statement nested or embedded within another query. The nested query, which is a subquery, is the inner query. The query that contains the nested query is the outer query. The purpose of a subquery is to return results to the outer query. The form of the results will determine whether the subquery is a scalar or a multi-valued subquery. The inner query acts like an expression from the perspective of the outer query. In addition to the choice between scalar and multi-valued subqueries, you may choose to write subqueries that are self-contained or subqueries that are correlated with the outer query. Self-contained subqueries can be written as standalone queries with no dependencies on the outer query. A self-contained subquery is processed once when the outer query runs and passes its results to the outer query. Correlated subqueries reference one or more columns from the outer query and therefore depend on the outer query. Correlated subqueries cannot be run separately from the outer query. Subqueries can be scalar, multi-valued, or table-valued like we discussed before. But what does that mean? Scalar subqueries, like scalar functions, return a single value, and the outer queries need to be written to process a single result. Multi-valued subqueries return a result much like a single column table, and the outer queries need to be written to handle multiple possible results. Now let's see how to write scalar subqueries. A scalar subquery is an inner select statement within an outer query, and it returns a single value. Scalar subqueries may be used anywhere in an outer T-SQL statement where a single valued expression is permitted, such as in a select clause, a where clause, a having clause, or even a from clause. And if the subquery returns an empty set, the result of the subquery is converted and returned as a null. So you need to ensure that your outer query can gracefully handle a null in addition to any other expected results. The construction of the outer query determines whether the inner query must return a single value. Let's take a look at this query to see how subqueries are written. To denote a query as a subquery, you need to enclose it in parentheses, like shown here. Multiple levels of subqueries are supported in SQL Server, but in this lesson, we will only consider two-level queries, one inner query within another outer query. But up to 32 levels are supported in SQL Server. In this example, the inner query uses the max function to return the maximum order ID from the sales orders table, and the outer query takes this order ID and returns the details about the most recent order from the sales order details table. Let's execute this query and see what the results will look like. Let's open a new query. Let's paste the query that we just saw. Click on Execute. And it will return the order details from the sales order details table for the maximum order ID from the sales orders table. Let's execute the inner query by itself and see what the results will look like. Click on Execute. and it will return the latest order ID number. In the query that you see here, since the outer query uses an equal to operator in the predicate of the where clause, you need to ensure that the inner query returns only a single value. Let's see what happens if it returns more than one value. Let's get rid of the max function and let's execute the inner query by itself, and it returns more than one value. Let's select the whole query and click on execute. It will return an error, and the error says that the subquery returned more than one value. In this example, since we are using the equal to operator, the outer query is expecting only a single result from the inner query. And when the outer query uses any of these operators that you see here, it will return an error when the inner query returns more than one result. Let's change the inner query back to use the max function so that it will return only one ID, and click on execute on the whole query. Now let's see if we can use the same subquery in the select clause. Let's copy this and paste it in the place of the order ID and call it order ID. Let's delete this. Now let's execute this query and see what the results will look like. Click on execute, and the results are the same as displayed before.